Okay, here's the deal. My power rankings are garbage now. I released the first half of my power rankings literally the same moment that Overwatch League officially confirmed the 2-2-2 lock in Stage 4. Like literally posted at the exact same moment, like literally so unlucky. Well, that sucks, I thought, but it's probably fine. Even though the fundamentals of the game are changing as we know it, I bet the overall pecking order will stay about the same, right? Oh, you poor, naive little boy. Bam! Paris beats Houston. Bam! Gladiators beat NYXL. Bam! Charge beat Fusion. All games that contradict my power rankings, and this was just day 1 of Stage 4. Trying to definitively find the best teams right now is actually futile. There's just so much in the air right now, but gosh darn it, I promised I would finish this 2-part series, and I already delayed it by a week, so I'm gonna do it. I'm just changing it a little bit. Instead of this video being a prediction of what's to come in Stage 4, it's going to be a retroactive look at how these top 10 teams performed in the pre-222 era of Overwatch League. Basically where they stand as the GOATs and triple DPS metas come to a close. My first video was made with a pre-role lock meta in mind, so it's still valid. Also, make sure you've watched that video before you get into this one, because if your team isn't in this video, well, I have some bad news for you. Anyways, let's get on to the top 10. Number 10, London Spitfire. Yeah, right in the middle seems to be about the right spot for these guys. The Spitfire were never quite able to find their footing in a GOATS meta. I can't help but feel similar to these guys as I do to the Fusion, as they stuck pretty stubbornly to GOATS even though it never seemed to fit them. Of course, the Spitfire are this high because they have a few incredible players on their rosters. Whether it was Zarya or Brig, Prophet excelled in everything he played because he's just amazing like that, and Fury has secured his spot as a top diva in the league despite the rest of his team's middling performances. Bedosin and Nuss, I can say, have really fallen backwards as a support duo. Neither of them have been too noteworthy together. Neither is Gesture. His Rhine has been criticized in the past, but his Winston hasn't been that great either. Better than his Rhine, though. Every once in a while he'll have a pop-off game, but other than that, he's been pretty much invisible. Then, there's Birdring. Possibly the streakiest player in Overwatch League at this point, and the Spitfire's success really does seem to hinge off of him. He was not a very good Zarya at all, and when he was finally put back in on Brig, he was just okay, which was not what the team needed. I also want to know why the Spitfire didn't utilize Guard more, especially in Stage 3 when Sombra became more popular, as Guard Sombra was recognized as one of the best in the world during his days with Element Mystic. Maybe it was a comms thing, I don't know, but the results speak for themselves. The Spitfire haven't won a playoff game since the big one last year, and the organization is clearly not happy with their performance as Coach 815 was let go just a few weeks back. Moving forward, the Spitfire need to prove to the world that they can make it back there. Players like Prophet and Fury will almost surely keep them in it, but Gesture, Bedosin, and Nuss need to make sure that they can recapture the championship performance from last year, and Birdring finds himself in the position of sorely needing to prove himself once again. Number 9. The Houston Outlaws. Is this a lot of recency bias? Probably, but it's really hard to not be impressed at the turnaround that the Outlaws made between an 0-7 Stage 2 and a playoff appearance in Stage 3. After the organization finally got sold over to Immortals, it felt like you could see the relief on everyone's faces, not just in their mannerisms, but in their play. We saw a lot more DPS-centric playstyles from the Outlaws, and it worked really well. Dante, Linkser, and Jake have all had their moments, and are a huge part of why the Outlaws are where they are now. I also have to give a shout out to Raucus. While his Zen has been heavily scrutinized since Season 1, the Outlaws finally let him on Ana, and he has looked so much better on that hero. Rounding out the roster right now is Muma and Boink. I have the least to say about the both of them, except they've been good. Boink is an alright Lucio player, doesn't seem to make the biggest plays, but he does his job well. Same for Muma right now. He's not amazing at any of the main tanks, but he's good at all of them, which makes him very versatile. Of course, every once in a while the Outlaws will decide, hey, you know what would be funny? Let's lose to the Mayhem. which is why I can't put them any higher than this. But the Outlaws have catapulted themselves back into the playoff conversation, which is way better than what I could have said for them a few weeks ago. Number 8, the Seoul Dynasty. Seoul is a very interesting team, and one that can be very difficult to analyze just because of how ballsy they've been with their team compositions. Through Stage 3, it seemed that the Dynasty were the first team to really embrace the fully fluid roster, and it made preparing for them extremely difficult. Any given game, you could be facing off against Fissure or Marvel, Fleta or Fitz, Jexay or Toby, etc. They had 2 players for each role and didn't have 2 segregated teams. They swapped in and out just based on who they thought would be the best that day. And for the most part, it's been working. The Dynasty have made 2 stage playoffs this season and were very close to making a 3rd. They've made it to the semifinals in Stage 1 as well, making them infinitely more successful than their Season 1 iteration, so that's great to hear. However, the Dynasty have never quite been able to break into that top tier of teams. They've consistently been good, but that doesn't win you championships. The question has to be brought up. If the Dynasty focused on a starting 6 and really made the synergies between those 6 players were as strong as possible, would they be better right now? I can't tell you, but it definitely is a possibility. Not to mention the fact that the Dynasty are slowly bleeding players, with both Fissure and Munchkin leaving the team in the past few weeks. I'm not sure what to think of these decisions and what it says about the internal goings-on of the Dynasty, but at best, it's a coincidence, and at worst, it's really bad. So hopefully it's the former, and the Dynasty can really hit their stride as the season starts rolling to a close. Otherwise, I can't picture them holding a candle to the teams who are really competing for the title. Number 7. LA Valiant. So, whatever the Outlaws did to turn their season around, take what they did and, double it, and you have a pretty accurate representation of what the Valiant have done. I've hit on this before, but the Valiant's journey this year has been eerily similar to last year. After a disappointing Stage 2 that left most people thinking that they were out of it, the Valiant went through a makeover in their coaching, as well as picking up a bunch of new players, and all of a sudden, the Valiant are in the running for the whole thing. You know, as long as they can make the playoffs. The Valiant have very heavily praised their new coaching staff of Packing 10, Stoop, Promise, and Reprise for their success, and to be honest, I'm not surprised to see that. You could see the Valiant improving with every game they had with this group in. Maybe it was partially due to their familiarity with new players like Fact Fiction and Shax, playing for those same coaches under Mayhem Academy. Fact Fiction has exploded onto the scene for the Valiant, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him over Muma or Super for Team USA at this point. He's just been that good, and the team rallies around him so well. Agilities has gotten more opportunities to go back onto his pocket Genji and Pharah, which has been a ton of fun to watch. Shax's Sombra hasn't been the best in the world, but it's been serviceable for sure. Cuss has been as solid as ever. And Kareev, holy crap. Why did the Valiant ever think that putting him on Hitscan was a good idea? I've never considered Kareev to be an amazing player before, just an above-average flex support that's okay on Widow, but I haven't seen an Ana come up with so many impactful plays in such a small sequence of time. Kareev has been one of the most influential support players over the past month or so, and his inclusion on Team Korea 2019 is no surprise at all. Their semi-final appearance in Stage 3 shows that the Valiant absolutely have the potential to hang with the best. Of course, in order to have a shot at the championship, the Valiant need to get there first, and to do that, they still need to dig themselves out of their own hole. However, if they can secure a spot in the top 12, the Valiant could be one of the scariest teams to go up against in the postseason. Number 6. LA Gladiators. Isn't it weird that after everything the 2 LA teams have gone through, they still end up right next to each other in the power rankings? I find it hilarious because it happens every time I make one of these. Anyways, it seems like the Gladiators have recovered well from their loss of Fissure over the offseason and have been a solid team to watch all season. The Gladiators have always been a team that aren't afraid to innovate, and this has made them super fun to watch as one of the only teams that didn't play GOATs 100% of the time. They did it like 90% of the time, but we take what we can get. Decay has also been a bit of an unsung hero so far this season. I hope he'll really get the chance to shine now that DPS are back, but he has consistently been among the better Zaryas in this league, and that's among some stiff competition. Looking at the rest of the Gladiators, Void, Shaz, and Big Goose have been as solid as always and are definitely benefits to the team. Surefour has been keeping his status as one of the best hit scans in the game even after all this time. And even though we don't see Hydration much anymore, you know when you see him take the stage that the Gladiators are planning something crazy. The biggest thing in the way of this team right now is their futility in the playoffs. I mean, there are other teams who get made fun of for how they perform in the playoffs, but I think it needs to be said that the Gladiators haven't won a single playoff series in their entire history. Like, you've been in 3 stage playoffs and 1 season playoffs, and you haven't gotten to the second round at any point. This is a problem. The Gladiators need to prove to me that they can win in these situations to move up further in the standings. Before I move on to the top 5, if you're enjoying this video so far, I would appreciate it a ton if you left a like and subscribe with notifications on so you know every time I've uploaded a video. Thank you so much. Number 5, NYXL. Ooh boy, now we started to get into the good stuff. I feel like this is going to be an unpopular opinion, I might get roasted for it a bit, so let me try my best to explain my rationale. So, throughout this whole season, the NYXL have considered to be one of the big 3 teams competing for the top of the standings. However, unlike the other 2 teams in this group, the NYXL were in the Atlantic Division, which I think we can all agree by now has allowed them to have a much easier schedule to this point. The NYXL were also unanimously viewed as the 3rd best team by a fair margin. There was the first few teams, then NYXL, then everyone else. The NYXL were 3rd, not because they were necessarily at the same level as the other 2, but because there was just no one else except for the top 2 that could beat them. But as Stage 3 continued, several teams were coming into their own and challenging the NYXL for their spot in the top 3, and to be honest, they haven't done a great job of defending their spot. The NYXL have made it into all 3 stage playoffs this season, but they've only won a single playoff game. This is not normal, especially when you're the favorite in almost all of these matches. This isn't just this season either. This image of playoff chokers has stuck with the NYXL since last season's playoffs, or even pre-Overwatch League as LW Blue. No one trusts the NYXL to win when the lights are at their brightest, and it really is a shame, because if they had a little more playoff success under their belt, we might have seen players like Mono and Nene and Onimo, who have been amazing this season, in the conversation for the season MVP. But unless they prove me otherwise in the season playoffs, all I see from the NYXL right now is wasted potential. Number 4, the Hangzhou Spark. The Spark have been slowly climbing over the course of the season, from mid-tier to good to great, and have absolutely earned their spot in the top 4 teams in the league. What was originally a rough start for the Spark, where they were still finding their identity and shaking off stage nerves, has morphed into a fearsome team that is extremely versatile and has synergized incredibly well with each other. The star of the team is still Guxue, who has picked up where he left off in the Overwatch World Cup to become one of the most prominent main tanks in the league on both Rhine and Winston. IDK has maintained his status as a top main support as well. He is always exactly where the team needs him to be on Lucio. Godsby, Hidor, and Bebe have grown into extremely competent players as their roles in GOATs. I'd say that all 3 of them are above average at their roles. Rhea is the one player that's starting right now that I find the least impressive on the Spark. It just feels like he had a few pop-off moments at the start of the season, and since then, he's just been alright. But even though the Spark are a team to fear, and of course they still have players like Bozzy and Crystal sitting on the bench, who can be absolute monsters at those hit scan and flex DPS roles in the future, as well as total question marks like Sassen. The Spark have grown into a fearsome team, are almost guaranteed to be in the top 12, if not the top 6, and if you're up against them in bracket, I would be scared. Number 3, the Shanghai Dragons. The Shanghai Dragons put on the most incredible stage playoffs performance that I have ever seen. Barely squeezing into the playoffs in the last game of their stage, the Dragons had a monumental task in front of them. Defeat all of the big 3 teams on stage in 4 days. It was a gauntlet, and no one expected them to get even close to the trophy. But 4 days later, we all watched in shock as the words "Shanghai wins" rolled across the screen, and the team embraced each other as confetti poured down onto them. The Dragons had achieved the impossible, and earned their way to be in the discussion of one of the best teams, and maybe even the best team in the world. Okay, now let's slow down, because obviously I don't think the Dragons are the best team in the world. Yes, the Dragons had the best postseason run in Overwatch since the London Spitfire in the playoffs last year. Yes, they beat the two teams above them in that postseason run, and yes, the Dragons roster is filled with incredible stars like DM, Gansu, Koma, Luffy, and Ding, who has quickly become the best farer in the world. But that was just one weekend. The Dragons had an amazing weekend, but I don't think we can get too far ahead of ourselves and call them the best team in the world yet. The best team in the world is consistently great, and that's not something that the Dragons have been up until this point. Reminder, the Dragons barely got into the playoffs in the first place, suffering losses against the Valiant and the Charge. That's not a team that I would consider to be number one. This is a team that needs to see more sustained success over a longer period of time for me to fully believe in their potential. However, that weekend, the Shanghai Dragons were the best Overwatch team in the world, and no one can take that away from them. Number 2, the Vancouver Titans. Well, here it is. The kings of the Overwatch League so far, only suffering a single regular season loss, and a stage title under their belt, sitting in second place. The Titans have exploded onto the scene so far. I mean, I think most people expected them to be good, but not this good. Their balls-to-the-wall style of GOATs, led by Bumper, was unlike any other team we've ever seen. And I think it's worth noting that in a meta where everyone was playing the same things, the Titans still managed to find a unique identity for themselves. And it worked. Undefeated in the regular season for almost 20 games, Stage 1 champions, these were the guys that everyone thought were the best team in the world, and there's a tons of good reasons for it. Slime and Twilight are the best support line in the whole league right now. Haxel is considered by most to be the best Brigitte in the world. Wouldn't it be cool if he learned more heroes too? Janu is definitely a top 3 diva in the entire league. Seominsu has always been a top 3 Zarya. Not to mention the flexibility that they could have if they bring in Stitch or even Hureg. And then we have Bumper. Always polarizing, always trash talking, and always in your backline. No matter what you think of him, he's spitting straight facts. No matter what you think of him, he has been the heart of this team so far, and this team has done a lot. I've already raved about how much I love the story of Runaway, and watching them come here to the highest level possible and kick some butt has been awesome to me. But it was only recently that they started to slip, just a little bit. I mean, stage winner to finalist to semi-finalist isn't that much of a slip, but unfortunately, that incredible resume is beaten out by just one team. Number 1, the San Francisco Shock. The sole owners of the Golden Stage. 3-time stage finalists, Stage 2 champions. The San Francisco Shock have been a force to be reckoned with all season long, and it's not difficult to see why. Their Season 1 pickups of Super and Sinatra have more than paid off, as their synergy on Ryan and Zarya respectively have made them one of the best tank lines in the league. Choi Hyobin isn't talked about nearly as much as he should be, as he has developed into an incredible diva and off-tank in general, probably top 3 in the league. Rascal, I think, was a snub for the MVP vote, not just because of Brigitte, but because he is Baptiste. He's the only one who really plays him, but he plays him really well and gets tons of value out of his kit, and I wish that the league had addressed that a little bit more. Moth has always been a top 5 Lucio, maybe even top 3 just because of how consistent he is, and of course Violet, which to be fair has been the least memorable player on the Shock recently. But that's not a bash against him and more a compliment to how amazing everyone else is, because Violet is still a great flex support player. Of course, then we look at all the people who are sitting on the bench. Striker, the hit scan legend. I have confidence that he'll be able to at least be a good Widow in Overwatch League, if not great. Architect, the Flex God, and the Genji carry, Nevix and Smurf are also there. My point is that when I look at the Shock, I see a group of superstars all across the board. No team has been as consistently good as them, coming in second in each stage at least. And when the meta changes, the Shock have the tools to change with it and stay near the top. Going into Stage 4 of Overwatch League with Role Lock enabled, it seems like the San Francisco Shock are the team to beat. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. What do you think about my pre-Roll-Lock top 10? Is there anything I said that you disagree with? Let me know in the comments. You know I love reading through your thoughts. If you like this video and want to see more, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I make competitive Overwatch content, and it would just make me delighted if you took a little bit of time out of your day to watch it. Until next time though, that's all from me. Don't get tilted.